Irfan Khan approached the American consulate in Mumbai to apply for a visa. His application was conditionally approved pending the customary medical checkups. Since he was physically fit to travel and posed no health risks, everything fell into place except for one small significant detail. After completing his medical checkup, the American consulate gave him a form which required endorsement from the Mumbai CID, Criminal Investigation Department. The CID refused to endorse his travel. His religious activities had been noticed and he was considered a Muslim zealot, and thus, a travel risk. The anti-terrorist police had a big dossier on him, full of information fed by informants and other sources. The police had also arrested 2 members of Irfan's mosque and charged them with conspiracy to carry out terrorist attacks on the city. The law enforcement of Mumbai suspected strong links with the Pakistani ISI, Inter-Services Intelligence, and the Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist group, Army of the Pure. Pakistan is the only country in the world whose government works hand-in-hand with designated terrorist groups and militants to wage proxy wars against its neighbors. It was not uncommon to see Pakistani ISI signatures on the Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists and other militants' plots on Indian soil. A routine bust by the Mumbai anti-terrorist team failed to produce sufficient direct evidence to indict, and the Indian courts were forced to acquit 2 of their suspects. In the course of the duo's interrogation, one of them had fingered Irfan Khan as one of their acquaintances. This bit of data was entered into record, and from then on, he was considered an Islamic radical. Given his association, the CID department refused to endorse his intent to travel. Irfan tried everything to expunge the records but failed. Then, he approached the American consulate and explained his situation to them. Not surprisingly, they ignored his appeal. Irfan Khan went from irritated to furious. He didn't like that the system which had already tagged him as a radical without due process. He only had contempt for a system that discriminated against him solely on the basis of his religious commitment. In the meantime, his resolve to inflict grievous hurt on the Indian slum girl raged unabated. He particularly bristled at the way the Hindus of India and the infidels of the world considered them the laughing stock of the world. Irfan Khan did not give up. He decided to carry out his plan regardless of personal cost. At first, his plan was to execute the hit as a lone wolf. The closure of all entry points nudged him to share his plan with his stepfather and some close friends at the mosque. His stepfather welcomed the idea and considered it a great honor for a Muslim young man exhibit such zeal and love for his prophet. He was agreeable to the idea and execution of the plan. The more they discussed it, the old man found himself entirely determined to help his stepson reach America, proposing financing and all material requirements. The other zealots were in agreement and likewise threw in their full support behind Irfan. The Muslim conspiracy collected around 50 lakhs, 5 million Indian rupees, and deposited the entire amount in Irfan Khan's bank account. That amount was collected from the faithful as zakat. Zakat is a term used in Islamic finance to refer to the obligation that an individual has to pay a certain proportion of his wealth each year to charitable causes. It corresponds to the idea of tithe in the Bible, but the individual pays more than 10% of his income. All the designated terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Hezbollah, Ansar Allah, Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Army of Muhammad, Taliban, Janjaweed, and the like are funded by a compulsory zakat from individuals through the mosques in Muslim as well as secular countries. The Imam of the Grand Mosque at Mumbai, Sheikh al-Din Khan, was now assumed full charge of the assassination plan and assumed the role of main mastermind. Under the blessings and guidance of his stepfather, the stepson was ordered to travel to Pakistan. Since he was not allowed to fly out via India, Irfan was smuggled by Indian and Pakistani radicals out of the country via the Jammu-Kashmir provinces. His stepfather sent him to a famous and popular imam in Lahore city, who had already been briefed by Imam Sheikh al-Din Khan of his son's heroic cause. Upon his arrival, Irfan Khan was received by the Pakistani Imam in Lahore city as a great Muslim hero and accorded royal treatment. The second step in the plan, the Pakistani Imam had to help Irfan Khan to change his first name and last name to ease into his new identity as a Pakistani Muslim. Through forgery and bribery, Irfan Khan now became Mustafa Abdul Gawad. Mustafa was the name of one of the Imam's sons and Abdul Gawad was his last name. The birth certificate and the ration card of the son were used to effect his identity switch. At the Lahore Grand Mosque, Zakat collections added 70 lakhs of Pakistan rupees to his coffers, 7 million rupees. The new Mustafa Abdul Gawad was fluent in American English, given his time there. It was common knowledge that a Pakistani-born Muslim would find it very difficult to get a tourist visa to the USA, considering he did not have any relatives stateside. His most viable option was to travel on a student visa. He decided to pose as an ambitious Pakistani student trying to gain admission into a prestigious American college. Due to the huge and vast differences in the academic standards between America and Pakistan, such demand was next to impossible. The prerequisite for a student visa was a certifiable admission to an American Institute of Higher Learning. To get that, Mustafa Abdul Gawad would need decent scores from TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language, and GRE, Graduate Record Examination. This entailed very high fees, and a pass was not enough to guarantee admission. A successful applicant would have to demonstrate high intelligence and ace all the exams. Language skills aside, as intelligent as he was, Mustafa needed bona fide examination results from the collegiate level exams to qualify. It took him a year to prepare and pass the TOEFL and GRE exams, and gain admission into an American Institute of Higher Learning. As soon as his admission was verified, he applied for a student visa. His American student visa was issued after the usual medical and Pakistani police clearances, the latter being cleared upon a huge bribe paid by the Lahore Imam. Mustafa Abdul Gawad was now free to fly off to the United States of America. During his 1 year in Lahore, Mustafa Abdul Gawad married a 14-year-old girl. She was the daughter of one of the jihadists in the mosque. His marriage to that girl was just meant to satisfy his lust temporarily. He knew that eventually he might end up dead in America, but this was never shared with either the girl or her father. When he got the American student visa, he lied to his father-in-law that he was going to apply for a spousal visa as soon as he reached America. In his heart, Mustafa longed to die as a martyr, and with that, his reward of 72 virgins of paradise who were 1,000,000 times more beautiful than his earthly wife. That his Pakistani wife was 6 months pregnant did not delay his departure in the least. The Quranic concept of the virgins of paradise makes Muslim men to treat Muslim women like dirt and use them just to satisfy their lust temporarily. Every Muslim man despises the women of this earth and yearns for the virgins of paradise. Islam teaches that the women of this earth are unclean, unfaithful, deficient in religion and intellect, condemned by Allah, and are already on their respective journeys to hell. Perhaps, the best way to bring out this point correctly is to refer to what the most influential and greatest Muslim theologian and scholar Abu Hamid al-Ghazali mentions about women. The Imam al-Ghazali is called the greatest Muslim scholar of all time. He is considered to be the greatest Muslim theologian, scholar, jurist, mystic, philosopher, and thinker who ever existed beside the Prophet Muhammad. He was of a Persian descent. Al-Ghazali was known as Al-Ghazlis or Al-Ghazal to the Western medieval world. His influences in the Muslim world can be compared to Saint Augustine's achievements in the Christian world. The defender of Islam or proof of Islam, Hujjat al-Islam in Arabic, as he is frequently referred to, has authored around 1,000 books on the fiqh of Islam, Islamic jurisprudence. The Muslim historian Ibn Khaldun describes fiqh as knowledge of the rules of God which concern the actions of persons who find themselves bound to obey the law respecting what is required, sinful, disapproved or neutral. Al-Ghazali was accredited for achieving 2 goals which in my views they did damage to the Islamic community rather than improved it. He criticized Western philosophy and made it a taboo for Muslims until today. He also reconciled the orthodox Islam with Sufism, that means the Muslim can follow Sharia laws and be a mystic at the same time. Before Al-Ghazali, the followers of those two schools hated each other and vehemently criticized and condemned one another. In his renowned book, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, the Imam Al-Ghazali defines the woman's role as: she should stay at home and get on with her spinning. She can go out only in emergencies. She must not be well informed, nor must she be communicative with her neighbors and only visit them when absolutely necessary. She should take care of her husband and respect him in his presence and his absence and seek to satisfy him in everything. She must not leave her house without his permission, and if given his permission she must leave secretly. She should put on old clothes and take deserted streets and alleys, avoid markets, and make sure that a stranger does not hear her voice, her footsteps, smell her or recognize her. Her sole worry should be her al-bud, reproductive organ, her home, as well as her prayers and her fasting, starvation for Allah. If a friend of her husband comes when her husband is absent, she must not open the door nor reply to him in order to safeguard her al-bud, her vagina. She should accept what her husband gives her as sufficient sexual needs at any moment. She should be clean and ready to satisfy her husband's sexual needs at any moment. The greatest theologian warns all Muslim men to be careful of women, for their guile is immense and their mischief is noxious, they are immoral and mean-spirited. Al-Ghazali also states, it is a fact that all the trials, misfortunes, and woes which befall men come from women. In his book, Counsel for Kings, the Imam Al-Ghazali sums up all that a woman is fated to endure her lot because of Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden. When Eve ate fruit which he had forbidden to her from the tree in paradise, the Lord, be he praised, cursed women with 17 punishments. 1. Menstruation. 2. Childbirth. 3. Separation from her father and mother and marriage to a stranger. 4. Pregnancy. 5. Not having control over her own person. 6. A lesser share in inheritance, 1/2 of the male entitlement as per the Quran. 7. Her liability to be divorced and inability to initiate divorce. 8. Acknowledge the law allowing man to have 4 wives, but for a woman to have only 1 husband. 9. The fact that she must stay secluded in the house. 10. The fact that she must keep her head covered inside the house. 11. The fact that weight of 2 women's testimonies have to be set against the testimony of a man. 12. The fact that she must not venture beyond the house unless accompanied by a near relative, a muharram. 13. The fact that men take part in Friday and feast days public prayers and funerals while women do not. 14. Disqualification for leadership and judgeship. That means the Muslim woman is not allowed by the Sharia to be a leader, president, boss, or judge. 15. The fact that merit has 1,000 components, only one of which is attributable to women, while 999 are attributable to men. 16. The fact that if women are profligate they will be given twice as much torment as to the rest of the community at the resurrection day. 17. The fact that if their husbands die they must observe a waiting period of 3 months and 10 days before remarrying. The idea that a woman's sole purpose and duty is to stay at home to satisfy the sexual appetite of her husband is again summed up in Al-Ghazali's book, Proof of Islam. The Imam Al-Ghazali is called the defender of Islam as well as the proof of Islam. This most influential thinker of Islam has molded the minds of millions of Muslims with his opinions on woman's character. He said, if you relax the woman's leash a tiny bit, she will take you and bolt wildly. Their deception, women, is awesome and their wickedness is contagious, bad character and feeble mind are their predominant traits. Al-Ghazali also exhorted women, a wife should never refuse her bud, her vagina, to her husband even if it is on the saddle of a camel. This advice is always quoted by Islamic religious leaders in the Muslim world. It recently quoted by the Damned Obedient Wives Club in Malaysia. This strange advice is taken from a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad where he said that the wife should not say no to her husband's sexual need even if the two are sitting on the saddle of a moving camel. Al-Ghazali forbids Muslim men to teach their women to read and write, do not add evil to unhappiness. He quotes his Prophet Muhammad, prevent women from learning to write, adopt positions opposite those of women. There is great virtue in such opposition. As the supreme jurist, Al-Ghazali defined marriage for Muslims: marriage is a form of slavery. The woman is man's slave and her duty therefore is absolute obedience to the husband in all that he asks of her person. Islam allows a man to marry 4 women at any one time and to beat his wives, Quran 4:3-4, 34. It allows only the man to initiate divorce, and in matters of law, reduces her testimony to half of that of a man. This in fact renders her solitary testimony as inadmissible. If a Muslim woman witnesses the slaughter of her own son, she cannot testify in court about his murder. In addition to the other irregularities mentioned before, a man is promised 72 virgins in paradise and the woman is fated to hell fire. To compound the gender inequality, women have to contend with widespread honor killings, child marriage, wife beating, and female genital mutilation. Although there are so many injustices against women in Islam, but the biggest evil has to be female genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is based on 3 authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which advocate female genital mutilation as compulsory for all Muslim women. This important topic is already discussed in Book 4, but we need to re-look at it again from slightly different perspective. According to Prophet Muhammad, female genital mutilation is a preservation of honor for women, Sunan Abu Dawud. Following the commandment of their prophet, majority of Muslims circumcise their female children with the belief that such practice helps their daughters preserve family honor. According to the World Health Organization, female genital mutilation is practiced in 28 countries in Western, Eastern, and Northeastern Africa, in parts of Asia and the Middle East countries, and within some immigrant communities in Europe, America, Canada, Australia, and South America. The World Health Organization has offered 4 classifications of female genital mutilation. The mainly practiced ones are Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. Type 1 is the removal of the clitoral hood, almost invariably accompanied by removal of the clitoris itself, clitoridectomy. Type 2 is the removal of the clitoris and inner labia. Type 3 is known as infibulation. It involves the removal of all or part of the inner and outer labias, and usually the clitoris, and the fusion of the wound, leaving a small hole for the passage of urine and menstrual blood. The small aperture does not allow for the full and proper discharge of menstrual blood and tissue. The remaining blood causes many kinds of sicknesses to the girl. Case study, by Jacques Lantier. Quoted in excerpts from Fran P. Hoskin. The Hoskin Report, Genital and Sexual Mutilation of Females. 4th Revised Edition, Women's International Network News, Lexington, MA, 1993, pages 114 to 115, 199-202 and 216 to 218. The child, completely naked, is made to sit on a low stool. Several women take hold of her and open her legs wide. After separating her outer and inner lips, the operator, usually a woman experienced in this procedure, sits down facing the child. With her kitchen knife the operator first pierces and slices open the hood of the clitoris. Then she begins to cut it out. While another woman wipes off the blood with a rag, the operator digs with her sharp fingernail a hole the length of the clitoris to detach and pull out the organ. The little girl, held down by the women helpers, screams in extreme pain, but no one pays the slightest attention. The operator finishes this job by entirely pulling out the clitoris, cutting it to the bone with her knife. Her helpers again wipe off the spurting blood with a rag. The operator then removes the remaining flesh, digging with her finger to remove any remnant of the clitoris among the flowing blood. The neighbor women are then invited to plunge their fingers into the bloody hole to verify that every piece of the clitoris is removed. This operation is not always well managed, as the little girl struggles. It often happens that by clumsy use of the knife or a poorly executed cut the urethra is pierced or the rectum is cut open. If the little girl faints, the women blow pili pili, spice powder, into her nostrils. But this is not the end. The most important part of the operation begins only now. After a short moment, the woman takes the knife again and cuts off the inner lips, labia minora, of the victim. The helpers again wipe the blood with their rags. Then the operator, with the swift motion of her knife, begins to scrape the skin from the inside of the large lips, labia majora. The operator conscientiously scrapes the flesh of the screaming child without the slightest concern for the extreme pain she inflicts. When the wound is large enough, she adds some lengthwise cuts and several more incisions. The neighbor women carefully watch her work and encourage her. The child now howls even more. Sometimes in a spasm, children bite off their tongues. The women carefully watch to prevent such an accident. When her tongue flops out, they throw spice powder on it, hot red chili, which provokes an instant pulling back of the organ. With the abrasion of the skin completed according to the rules, the operator closes the bleeding large lips and fixes them one against the other with long acacia thorns. At this stage of the operation the child is so exhausted that she stops crying but often has convulsions. The women then force down her throat a concoction of plants. The operator's chief concern is to leave an opening no larger than a kernel of corn or just big enough to allow urine, and later the menstrual flow, to pass. The family honor depends on making the opening as small as possible because with the somalis, the smaller the artificial passage is, the greater the value of the girl and the higher the bride price. When the operation is finished, the woman pours water over the genital area of the girl and wipes her with a rag. Then the child, who was held down all this time, is made to stand up. The women then immobilize her thighs by tying them together with ropes of goatskin. This bandage is applied from the knees to the waist of the girl and is left in place for about 2 weeks. The girl must remain lying on a mat for the entire time while all the excrement evidently remains with her in the bandage. After that time, the girl is released and the bandage is cleaned. Her vagina is now closed, except for a tiny opening created by insertion of a straw or reed, and remains closed until her marriage. Contrary to what one would assume, not many girls die from this torture. There are, of course, various complications, which frequently leave the girl crippled and disabled for the rest of her life.